As a child, when a nun narrated me the story of Adam and Eve from the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible, and when I got to know when it reached a point where Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge and evil, and then they enter into sin and God banishes them. I was always curious about that tree. I think I was get into those thought loops where I'm like, what kind of fruit is that? And what exactly did that tree signify? And what was the big deal in terms of them having a fruit from a tree that God felt so offended that he banished both of them? And if it was such a big deal, why did God put it in the Garden of Eden in the first place? And eventually, as I grew up, I became an avid reader and I got my answer in theology. And I made some notes out of it, and they are just right in front of me, and I will just read them out for you. What was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? It was not merely a tree, it was not merely a fruit, it was not God placing a random temptation in the garden to watch humanity fail. The tree was the boundary between the creature and the creator. It was a place where man had to decide whether truth would be received from God Himself or defined apart from Him. The tree was not God withholding wisdom. I repeat, the tree was not God withholding wisdom. It was God protecting communion. It was not like Adam and Eve were naive and ignorant before they ate the fruit, because they were themselves walking with God in His goodness, in His peace, in His presence. What they did not know was evil by participation, shame that they felt deep within, and guilt was not in their bloodstream, and they did not know the feeling of hiding from a voice that gave them peace. The serpent's temptation was not simply eat this fruit, it was deeper than the appetite. When I say it was deeper than appetite, I mean this. The serpent meant you can have wisdom without trust, truth without submission. You can become like God without remaining with God. Then that is the oldest lie in the human soul. The moment Eve began to doubt God's goodness, the tree changed in her eyes. Boundary became oppression, the forbidden became desirable, and disobedience began to feel like maturity. And this is exactly how sin works. It does not openly ask you to hate God, it asks you to reinterpret Him. And at this exact point of notes, the answer starts emerging. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was not just a tree or was not just merely a fruit, it was about authority. That who decides what is sin, God or man? And this very question, that who decides what is good or evil, God or man, is alive to this very day every time when a person announces this is my truth and discards what God already declared as truth. This question keeps coming alive every time desire is treated as identity, rebellion as freedom, and sin as authenticity. Once Adam and Eve have that fruit from the tree of knowledge and evil, something really interesting happens. They don't become God, they rather become aware of their nakedness. Before the fruit, they were naked and not ashamed of themselves. After they had the fruit, they are naked and ashamed of themselves. So they are in their same bodies, nothing about their bodies has changed, but everything about their soul changed. And that's why Eden is not just ancient history, it is the anatomy of the fallen human heart. because man still hides behind religion, sexuality, business, self protection, humor, love, and his own brokenness. He is still sewing fig leaves and calling it healing. But the wound is deeper than psychology, the wound is theological. And man is divided within himself because he alienated himself from God.